So thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that
Sure.
you reached out to me, and I am grateful that you've put in all this work with Intersect, and everybody else on the Intersect team has been putting in a lot of work through this past year, so that should be recognized.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and that's why I'm always out there saying, "Hey, please join Intersect. We need more help," because because it's literally overwhelming the amount of work that has to be done. I mean, we all try to get as much done as we can, but there's not enough humans yet doing all the work that needs to do.
Dang. So more community involvement would be better.
Yes, please.
Um, so I know we don't have a ton of time, so I wanted to just get the most important questions out first.
Sure.
Um, what was the decision, or why was the decision made to lead with a large ask of 300 to 500 million ADA without numbers to present as a support for this?
Okay, and thank you for that question. That is probably one of the most important questions. The number that was represented, the 300 to 500 million, is what the safety goals, safety guidelines are, guardrails, as it were, from Treasury experts, the folks at CF and IO that watch the Treasury, understand how it moves, and understand what the ramifications would be. They gave us this number. They said if you stay between 300 and 500, you're safe. And so that was where that number came from. So that number's not an ask.
Hmm.
It's it's a range that we're safe to use in the discussions for the asks, which we're only now starting to talk about during the month of November.
Okay. Um, so it's possible, so this is for setting net change limit then? Is that
That's right.
okay?
Exactly. This is the number that's important for the net change limit. You don't want to set it too low because if you set it too low, we could strangle development. You don't want to set it too high because if you set it too high, then obviously too much can be pulled from the treasury and that could have other problems. So that number is really about setting the net change limit.
Okay, so then we don't necessarily have to withdraw even the 300 million ADA if we decide that that is not uh,
That's right.
needed.
And that's up to the DReps. And that has always in this process been up to the DReps.
Okay. So is there, are we getting close to what numbers are going to be potentially going in each bucket? Like what the potential priorities might be for each of those buckets?
So most importantly on that, that's one of the questions that was asked in the survey that was recently put out. And
Okay.
so it's really important if everybody fills out that survey to let us know what's your highest priority. And in the survey, you have to put them 1 to 5. Like we need everybody to tell us where they think it should be. And then having those numbers, we're going to publish the not the individual numbers, but
Right.
the what the overall are of what that looked like. What did the community say was the most important buckets to run with?
Right. It's like from your presentation in Dubai, it sounded like all those buckets are important for various reasons. And then like potentially how much money gets allocated for those buckets, that depends on what needs to be funded.
That's right. Like you got to think something like core development it requires, well, developers. So developers are expensive and so that kind of stuff, obviously that bucket's going to spend more money than government support, which, and it just is, so government support does not need nearly as much money. So it's not like you'd want them to be like a same number in each bucket. That just won't make sense. But, community innovations and community grants, that bucket kind of has to have a certain amount in it so that we can get enough community projects going, right? So there's some buckets need more, other buckets need less. That's natural. The research bucket needs a 3-year approval, but doesn't spend all the money in the first year. So there's also differences there as well, where we're agreeing to fund a certain amount of stuff over a certain period of time, and those numbers are different and they have different meanings.
Right. So would IOG's future development fall under research then and not like core?
IO could be doing both.
Okay. Okay.
There, that there's IO's just one. There's a number of vendors. IO's down to less than 50% of all of the commits now. They're like 40 something percent of all the commits in core now. So that's already reducing
Mm,
over time, and other companies are taking it on, which is a good thing. We love IO, but we don't want them bottleneck to where they have to do everything, right? So the fact that they're now below 50% of the total commits is actually a really good sign that we're growing as a community, and more companies are taking responsibility.
yeah. Okay. Um. So I guess with that survey and like prioritizing items, uh, and then when we get numbers back, are we gonna see like, okay, in say research, these five things were determined as priority, and like this is how much money each of those things would get?
Kind of, yes. So that's one of the careful things with budget. I like to actually compare it to, like, next year I want to buy a new car.
Hmm.
So I'm budgeting between 30 and 50,000 US dollars to buy a car,
Right.
right? I don't know that my car is going to cost me
Right.
$42,523.17
Right.
until after I've bought the car and gone home and gone, oh my God, what have I done? Like, all of that has to happen before I know really how much that car is going to cost me, right? So, but what we try to do with the budget is we set the priorities and we set the buckets, and we say this is roughly what these items will cost to do. And you do that with development. You do that with something called t-shirt sizing, where you determine roughly the amount of people it takes, and then you understand roughly what it costs to support those people, and that number gets you very close to what it should look like. Then, most importantly, every quarter we actually put the real numbers in front of the DReps. So the DReps every quarter could say, that's not okay, we're going to have to stop that. And we have an info action or a treasury action or whatever we need to do to stop anything that's just not working, right? So the DReps are always in control of this process. But that's why it's real important to understand that when you're making the budget, you don't know it's going to cost $5,000 to do this, or 5,008 or whatever.
Right.
That doesn't happen in budget. That happens after tendering and during the quarterly reports. Are they staying on track or are they not? And that's where the DReps are still in control, still telling us what to do, and still meeting with us every quarter to see what the work is and how it's progressing.
Right. But like, say a company pitches, I want to do this job for you. Uh, like people are gonna be coming to Intersect asking for funding more than Intersect looking
That's
for other people. So they're gonna say, I want to do this job. They're gonna have to present like an amount that they're expecting it to cost roughly.
a time and materials is what they're going to present. They're
I
not going to
see.
present. They want, no big company is going to say, I will produce this for you for X dollars. They're not going to do it. They're going to say, here's our time and materials, and we believe it'll take 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is, to
Okay.
develop it. And then we monitor to see that they stay on track. So that's why it's real important, the difference between a budget and a bill of sale, right? The bill of sale always comes at the end, it never comes at the beginning. But again, that's why the companies that we're talking about right now, and this idea of a preferred vendor list,
Hmm.
they're companies that have already been producing for Cardano, and we can trust that they would continue producing for Cardano. Charles mentioned something about, like, Cardano kind of having a credit score over time. And that's what we're developing now. We're paying those time and material contracts, proving that we are good payers to these companies so that they work with us more in the future, and and continue to give us better dealings in the future. So it's a two-way street. It's not just Cardano can't demand, oh, give me this for this much money, and if you can't meet it, then you're fired or whatever it is. It doesn't work that way. We're not in that position, and we have to build our credit with our creditors just as well as our creditors, the suppliers, have to build their credit with us to prove that they're trustworthy to get the job and the work that they need to do. So it's a two-way street there.
Okay. So providing like this is put out there to people, like the budget, like we won't have exact numbers, but you you could potentially have a range, like you were saying, for the price of a car, and like this is
That's
based on fiat more than ADA because ADA price changes in the end.
Well, it has to be, right. My studio, I have to pay a light bill, I have to pay rent, and all those things I have to pay in fiat, right? So I have to be paid in fiat to pay those things, right? It'll be the same for every company that works for Cardano. They all have to pay their fiat bills. But we do have to denominate the treasury budget in ADA. So that's one of those things. That's that whole idea of treasury management that we have to do. The money that comes out of the treasury, we have to be super careful with we how we change it into fiat, or how the vendors who buy from us, or I'm sorry, the vendors who provide services for us sell from ADA into fiat. So if we get bills in fiat and we manage when we sell the ADA effectively, then that means that the ADA level doesn't have to drop as fast, because if it's a good idea, a good time right now to sell, they can sell more than they need for this month to be a little bit ahead of the game, but hedging against a future growth as well. That's what the treasury management folks would have to do. And that's actually the subject of a whole nother working group that we have to build. That is, like, I'm in the process now of getting the guardrails together, but that still has to be built.
Yeah. So in the end, though, we should be able to know roughly, like, initial estimates of what something could cost to be able to determine, okay, this is how much money we need in a bucket, and for, like, say, this project.
That's right, and definitely bucket. You know, not as defined per project right now, but still a good idea, because we've had different companies give us what we call t-shirt sizing.
Right.
So we know based on that t-shirt sizing that if they all came back with roughly the same t-shirt size, well, now we have a good range.
Yeah.
And we always say everybody can do the math on this anyway, but we don't want to. What we want the community to do is say, yes, I do want that feature. No, I don't want that feature.
Mhm.
That's the thing that we want to talk about now the best we can, and then we want these features, and then the community also says we want to not spend more than this net change limit. So with those two items, we actually can say, okay, if the net change limit is here, then we can get this far in our wish list. We won't go any further than this, because any further than this would mean that we're breaking that like I talked about it in last week's, or I'm sorry, earlier this week's meeting, the AMA. That idea. I'm former military, and you don't ever run anything at 100%. You always try to run it at 80% or so, because you need that extra 20% for emergencies, for things you just can't plan for. Right? So you never run everything at 100% all the time. You only run it at 100% when it's critical. And so that would be the idea, that the community is going to say, hey, we can't spend more than this number, whatever that net change limit is.
Right.
And then we have all these priorities. Here are the priorities that fit in that net change limit. We can get these done for you. Now they have two choices. They could increase the net change limit, or they could change priorities. And then and that's the part where we're in now, is hey, here's what we think the priorities should be. Here's the things. And this is really cool that members of the community have been working with big companies like IO and other big companies that have worked with IO in the past to develop Cardano, and are saying, if you were to develop this, what does this cost? Not cost, but what is the t-shirt size? What's your time and materials that you would estimate for this? And they've done that work. And that's community members that have done that work. So they've now put together, hey, here are the things that we think we can develop in core this year, and roughly we can do it in this rough budget estimate. And so that we've never done as a community before. That's always been done inside of IO and inside of CF up to this point. So we are, as a community, this is our first time getting our feet wet, our hands dirty, however you want to call it, to do this together. And so community members have stepped up, and they've been putting together these lists. And starting on the 13th, if everything works out well, starting on the 13th, we're going to have some of those committees come and show what they think they can accomplish this year. And if the DReps like it, then they can say, I like that item, and then we can go and we can talk net change limit, and we can come to a decision. We should spend X this year, and then we can go back and say, okay, if we spend that X, here's what it will look like. Right. And that's the first time we're getting closer to what a real budget, what the info action will look like. It still won't be perfect, but it's at least our first step toward that. Well, we can't do that without all this community involvement up until then. So that's why we're having all these AMAs every week, trying to get that feedback.
Right. And the deadline on this is not the end of this year, it's the end of Q1 of next year, right?
So here's the thing. Intersect has been very good with managing the funds that it was given last year to give itself runway into about March of this year. Oh, next year, sorry, March of next year. So that's as far as there's nothing after that. It's done. Like, you remember that idea of not running at 100%?
Yeah.
That's what running at 100% looks like. So that's really scary. So can we try to get to this in January, maybe February at the latest? I really hope so. I'm pulling out all the stops, making myself as available as possible, getting all of the trying to not whip the committees, but really whip the committees. Like, come on, guys, we need this information. And to their credit, they're trying. Again, this is brand new for all of us, but they are trying their best to get this information together and be able to present it to the community next week. If all that works out and we can have the reasonable discussions we need to have, we have a budget. And if we have a budget, we can start doing the info actions. We can put them on chain, get our approvals, and march forward. I hope so. That's the goal.
Okay. So we were talking about how net change limit is not necessarily going to be Intersect's budget. This is just like an idea of what we can spend in a year. Other info actions can still be submitted after the budget is passed, and they can potentially be funded providing they fit with the net change limit, or if they're voted on by the Constitutional Committee and DReps.
That's what it comes down to. It's up to the Constitutional Committee and DReps. So they can choose that and say that the annual budget is only the Intersect annual budget, or the annual budget is this much money, and Intersect, because Intersect is managing the continuity contracts and all this other stuff, that is this part of the budget, but there's still this much money left over. And that was kind of always what our vision was. The idea of an annual budget keeps us living within our means.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that's an important step. That's why Catalyst came along to the annual budget process instead of making their own info action. They came in, they wanted to be a part of it, because if the DReps can see what we think the annual spend should be, then the DReps can approve that. And again, that's that idea of reducing the cognitive load. Really comes down to not making the DReps re-engage budget 3 and 4 and 5 times a year. It's once a year. In any big organization, you do budget one time a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on purpose, because you have to really give it thought and time and think it through. And that's what we're giving that time and thought. So it would be better that, unless it's emergent, we really should be talking about it during this budget process. We're not telling anybody, no, you can't come to the budget. We're telling everybody, please come to the budget. If you've got something, bring it forward. If you think you've got to run your own info action, well, okay, that's your thought and that's your process. I appreciate it. Me just individually, it's not me talking at all for Intersect, but me as an individual, I disagree with that. I think that all of us coming together and agreeing on an annual budget and bringing forth all of the ideas and working together to say, what are we going to fund from the Treasury this year, makes a whole lot of sense. And then leaving a cap above that if something emergent happens, something that is urgent that we must attend to now, there's money and bandwidth of people to think it through to get it done without having to, I've got these 20 other info actions I've got to deal with today before I can get to that brand new emergent issue, because that may be what some people think. And I can't, and to me, that's worrisome. To me, that's not the right approach. We treat Cardano like a large organization, a large entity that it is, and come up with our annual budget and live within our means. I feel like we're in better shape. Again, that's just Lloyd talking. You can disagree with me, and I'm happy to have the conversation. But that's Lloyd talking. That's where I come from in that position. After spending a year working through this, that's where I stand, okay?
So I guess some of the concerns are like, so say you Intersect gets control of the full budget. It wasn't clear if Catalyst was a part of this budget. So
it is.
Okay, so that helps.
Yeah. So it's not even that Intersect's in control of it. Intersect is administering it. There's lots of companies who will have lots of asks, who will be doing lots of different work. And all Intersect is doing is administering it, which is what we were put here for as a body, as an organization. We were put here to be a place for the community to gather and a place for the community to approve things in the development of Cardano, and then to administer the work, the actual like legal and boring and tried and true needed work that you have to do for regulatory compliance and for all those other things. And that's what we're here for. And that's what that's what Intersect is supposed to do. And I always try to remind everybody, Intersect is us. We sign up for it. We become members. We can direct it. I know I signed up as a member, and I've been working to direct parts of it the whole time because I just showed up, and they've never not listened. They've always said, "Great idea. How do you implement it?" And then we keep moving forward. And I'm not the only one doing that. There's lots of community members who have just continued to do that. And all I can do is encourage everybody to be part of it, because that was what it was made for. And it was kind of a gift to the community. Here you go. Here's your place where you take the reins and gather together to build the future of Cardano. And I took it seriously when they said that, and here we are. So
Um, so Intersect manages, right? Doesn't control.
that's right.
So the CDF or Dev Trust is essentially the entity that gets the ADA from the Treasury at the beginning.
Yes.
So can we get more details about Dev Trust? Like, is there a way for us to find who is
Yeah.
a part of Dev Trust?
Absolutely. So Lawrence is writing that up. He's on holiday today, so he won't be in the AMA that I've got 4 minutes to get to.
Yeah,
so but it's okay. No, we're good, man. We're good. So, but if you don't mind, this will be the last question for today, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So Lawrence is doing a write up on the CDF, so everybody has a much better understanding of what it is and why it's there. But in just a thumbnail sketch, it's actually its entire purpose is it's designed so that Cardano's money can't be spent except on Cardano's stuff. So the way that corporation is designed, you have to follow very strict rules to get everything approved. And so Intersect follows all those strict rules to make sure everything gets approved correctly and ordered in time. And then it's all audited and managed because it has to be. It would literally be against the law to not audit it and take care of all that. So we don't have to double dip on how do we audit all of these processes that are coming out of the Treasury. We've already got it done. It's already built into the process if we let Intersect do that part of the work. So it's not Intersect trying to take control of anything. It's Intersect trying to save the community money and make sure that the community is doing things as efficiently as it can.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what it's there for. But I'll let Lawrence's letter speak to that in more detail.
Okay, great.
So, all right, man. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the questions. I really appreciate it. And I'm really glad we got to spend this time together today.
Yeah, it was great. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much, Lloyd.
You get it, Brian. We'll talk soon, okay? I'll hopefully see you on the AMA, but we'll talk soon.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.